Hey, what is going on everybody? So today on the channel we're going to be taking a look here at the iPhone 5. Now I have all sorts of old iPhones and I've been meaning to make some videos about them. Now I was going to originally kick this off with the iPhone 3G, but somebody erased it and you have to have a SIM card in order to activate it. So yeah, I cannot set up that phone, so I'm not sure. I might find a workaround, but I was going to kick it off with that. So then my next option was the 4S. And then the 4S was having some problems. So the 5 was the only phone that booted up, no problem, and I could set it up actually. So don't worry, I'm gonna have some other videos on other phones, but today, like I said, we're kicking it off with the iPhone 5. So this iPhone 5 is actually pretty special to me because this was my first ever iPhone. I had some iPod touches before this phone, but this was actually the first iPhone that I ever owned. It's a silver AT&T phone with 16 gigabytes of storage, and I absolutely loved it, and I still love the design of this thing today. Now I am going to be comparing this a lot to the iPhone 4S because, well, this is what it replaced after all, and we're basically going to be seeing how does this thing hold up in 2020, can you still use it, and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be comparing this to the iPhone 4S mostly, and this phone was actually a pretty huge improvement over the iPhone 4S. Pretty much the same kind of design language, but it was much bigger, it had the bigger screen, bigger body, it still had the nice rounded edges that the 4S had, and honestly, I think this is one of the best iPhone designs ever. Of course, this phone stuck around for the first generation iPhone SE when that launched in 2016, and that was still a very popular phone in 2016, even though this is a 2012 design. And then this design also stuck with the iPhone 5S, of course, and then they redesigned it for the iPhone 6. So this phone came in silver or black and slate colors. Now the slate color wasn't a very durable color. A lot of these phones got pretty beat up, and that just wasn't a durable color. So when the 5S came out, then they replaced it, of course, with the space gray. But it was a nice back of this phone, even if you got the silver one. You had glass antenna bands up top, and then you had the aluminum backing of the phone. Now this phone is really nice to hold in your hand. It has a small form factor. It's nice to be able to touch all four corners of the screen with your thumb. Of course, when this thing was brand new, it felt gigantic because we were all used to the 4S or the iPhone 4. But when you put it next to a modern phone today, such as my iPhone 10, it looks pretty wild. So the display on here is a 4-inch Retina display. That bigger screen was a great improvement over the iPhone 4S. Also, something else new on this phone when it came out was the Lightning port and the headphone jack. So this was the first iPhone to feature the Lightning port. Of course, the iPhone 4S had that 30-pin connector. So the Lightning port was a very nice change, although it caused some controversy because, well, everybody had to go out and get new chargers. Also, the headphone jack was relocated from the top of the phone on the 4S to the bottom of the phone on the iPhone 5. And that also caused a lot of controversy, but we all know the fate of the headphone jack anyways. Also, with the home button on this was one of the last iPhones to feature the standard home button. So yes, the iPhone 5C had it as well, but when the 5S came out, they introduced the Touch ID. So when you're using this phone today, you do have to, either roll without a passcode or just simply put a passcode in. We definitely have it a lot easier today with Touch ID. We don't even think about it, but when I started using this phone more and more, I realized how nice it is to have Touch ID and Face ID. So I was pretty surprised to actually use the camera on this phone. It is an 8 megapixel camera and it does record 1080p video. Now it's not anything crazy, but back in 2012 it was more than adequate. The 8 megapixel camera actually takes decent photos. It's not bad at all. Now the 1080p video, that's a different story. It's a little choppy, it's not as smooth. Of course it doesn't record 60 frames per second, but still it's decent for what it is. Now let's talk about performance, because performance is pretty important, especially if you're still trying to use this phone here in 2020. So this featured Apple's A6 chipset, and that A6 chip allowed this phone to run all versions of iOS very smooth, and it gave it about 5 years of support, I believe. Also, the RAM was doubled in this phone from the 4S, so it now featured 1 gig of RAM instead of 512 megabytes. So that also made performance much smoother and faster as well. Now this phone came with iOS 6, and it was the last iPhone to feature that nostalgic iOS 6 design. Really love that design. I wish I could go back to it, but my phone is currently running the latest version of iOS 10. But like I said, this phone handled all versions of iOS that it could run very great. The 4S had some issues here and there when running different versions, but this phone had no issues through its entire life running all the OS. And you're on iOS 10. I mean, you're only 3, almost 4 versions behind. So yes, you don't have some of the latest updates and things, but you can still do quite a bit. Now, I guess the big question here that you're all wanting to know is, how can you use this thing in 2020? Well, it's totally possible. The only thing you may run into at times is you may find that when you're downloading applications, you may be downloading older versions of those apps, or you might not be able to download some apps at all. Also, when you go to Safari, you may notice some websites appear to be breaking, and that's because we're on a much older version of Safari. But if this tells you anything about the iPhone 5 lineup, including the 5, the 5S, and the 5C, I still know somebody that actually uses an iPhone 5C every single day. So that can tell you a lot about how it is to use this phone in modern times. So let me know in the comments down below, did you have an iPhone 5 or a 5C or even a 5S? Or do you still know somebody today that actually uses an iPhone 5? Be sure to put that down in the comments below. But overall, this was a great device. I love the design. Like I said, I think it's one of the best iPhone designs of all time. Still a great phone here today. Performance is still pretty decent. I think you could totally still use this, especially if you don't care about the latest version of iOS and you just want a cheap, reliable phone. Now, of course, that's going to get much worse though, especially when iOS 14 comes out. You're just going to keep getting further and further behind. But overall, if you're still using it, I think you can hang on for a little longer. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today in this video. Thank you all for watching, supporting the channel as always. Be sure to click that subscribe button and turn on that bell notification because I got some more old iPhone content coming your way very soon. But anyways, thanks again for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video.